Happy Tuesday. It is noon. You are watching CBC News BC and CBC Television. I'm Leanne Young. We're here in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Let's get to your top stories from around the province. It was a frightening afternoon for people in Surrey's Whalley neighborhood yesterday after a double shooting. Thankfully, no one was injured. Surrey police have arrested a suspect, though. At around 3 in the afternoon, SPS officers in the area reported that a man was shooting near Gateway SkyTrain station. Then shortly after, officers and civilians inside a community policing office say more shots were fired. The man was arrested nearby and taken into custody. The RCMP's explosive disposal unit was also called in after the suspect left a bag in the office, but it did not contain anything suspicious. Nanaimo RCMP say a 48-year-old man is scheduled to appear in court today on a charge of assault and dangerous driving. The charges stem from an incident in August, seen here, where a motorcyclist apparently shoves a cyclist on a road in Nanaimo. Police say the 78-year-old man then crashed face first into the sidewalk. Mounties say the motorcyclist did not stop. Nanaimo resident Marcel Trudeau is set to appear later today in court. And creditors of a high-profile BC ostrich farm are hoping they can finally cash in on money owed to them. 3 creditors claim the Universal Ostrich Farms have ignored court orders to repay debts worth more than $250,000. They have served papers to the Canada Food Inspection Agency, which wants to destroy the birds because of the threat of avian flu. Court records show those 300 birds appear to be the only assets belonging to the farm's owners, which is why 2 of the creditors say they've taken out garnishing orders against the CFIA, hoping to intercept any money that gets paid out if there is a cull. Universal Ostrich Farms told CBC they will follow due process in regards to the claims. Well, fall means cooler temperatures, shorter days, and typically an increase in respiratory illnesses. Some experts say BC could be in for a tough flu season based on what's happened in Australia, while others say it isn't always a reliable predictor. One doctor with the BC CDC says so far influenza and other respiratory viruses in BC remain low, but COVID-19 cases are starting to rise.
As of last week, indicators for influenza and RSV activity were low, and that's consistent with what we're seeing across the rest of the country. COVID-19 is a slightly different story. It's at moderate levels, and we look at indicators such as test positivity and wastewater trends for COVID. The good news for COVID is that we're not seeing a high burden of the more severe outcomes like intensive care unit admissions.
Notifications to book vaccine appointments have started going out, with the vaccine campaign starting mid-October. The Health Ministry is encouraging people to get their flu and COVID vaccines. Well, it was Mid-Autumn Festival yesterday when many Asian communities celebrate the full autumn moon and share gratitude for the harvest. And more than 100 seniors gathered in Chinatown for the occasion.
You can see from their smiles and the events, and they are very, active in participating in the ride-ons because it really goes back to, 60, 70 years of what they used to do when they were kids with their parents and in their home country.
Chow says she hopes events like this will bring warmth and community to seniors as they try to carry on their traditions. Mid-Autumn Festival is considered the second most important festival for many in the Chinese community, only after Lunar New Year. 中秋節快樂, as we say. All right, that's it for now. I'm Leanne Young. Stay here. BC Today with Michelle Elliott is next. More coverage from across the province coming up. Stay with us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Mark Carney and Donald Trump met today at the White House. It was cordial, even complimentary, but will anything concrete come out of it? We'll hear from the forest industry and ask you what BC needs out of these trade talks. After 12:30, let us know, how hard is it to find a clinic or a doctor when you need it? Delta is considering opening its own urgent care center. Sycamoose has already taken over its own clinic. We'll hear from both mayors and ask you about municipalities stepping in to fill that healthcare gap. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Thanks for joining us on CBC Radio, CBC Television, and live streaming too. And you can call us now. What does BC need in these Carney-Trump negotiations? And what do you make of what you saw if you watched or listened to that meeting this morning? Our numbers, 604-669-3733 or dial 1-800-825-5950. You can just hit pound 690 as well, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. You can leave a comment on our TikTok as well. It is the second time Prime Minister Mark Carney paid a visit to the White House in Washington. And this morning, he and U.S. President Donald Trump had discussions about the ongoing trade war. And they sat down to answer reporter questions in the Oval Office. Trump once again did most of the talking. Most of the reporter questions were addressed to him. The two leaders kept up an amicable front as Trump spoke on claims he's made in the past in the U.S. About the U.S. getting, quote, screwed over by Canada and other countries. Now, a blockbuster trade deal is not expected out of this meeting today, but Trump said Canada will walk away, quote, happy. Here were some highlights from this morning.
I think they're going to be very happy. We have a lot of things that we're working on that people don't talk about. They talk about, competitiveness. She's a very competitive person. And they talk about things that we don't necessarily agree on. But I think they're going to walk away very happy. We want to make our cars here. At the same time, we want Canada to do well making cars. So we're working on formulas, and I think we'll get there.
But yeah, and if I may, let's be clear about the relationship as it stands right now. We are the second largest trading partner of the United States. We do a lot of trade going across the border where we're cooperating, first thing. Secondly, we are the largest foreign investor in the United States. $500 billion in the last 5 years alone, probably $8 trillion in the next 5 years if we get the agreement that we expect to get. Thirdly, there are areas, as the President just said, where conflict, maybe not so much conflict, we compete. There are areas where we compete, and it's in those areas where we have to come to an agreement that works. But there are more areas where we are stronger together, and that's what we're focused on. And we're going to get the right deal for America, right deal, obviously, from my perspective, for Canada.
The people of Canada, they will love us again. Most of them still do. If you say only 25%. I assume a lot of them, I think they love us.
That's President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney at a press conference ahead of a private lunch that they held in Washington today. We are also watching for the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, Dominic LeBlanc, who was at that press conference as well. He is expected to speak to reporters at some point this afternoon. So we'll watch for that and bring that to you live when it does take place. Right now, we are taking your calls. What do you make of what you heard in that Trump-Carney press conference? What are you expecting from the Prime Minister in these negotiations? And what does BC need out of these talks? You can call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Just email bctoday@cbc.ca or leave a comment on our TikTok Live. In about 5 minutes from now as well, we'll hear from a forest company based in Prince George as they continue to face tariffs, of course, and new tariffs coming October 14th. Right now, I'm joined by Jovian Radheshwar. He's a political science instructor at Douglas College. Jovian, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me back.
What did you make of the press conference this morning?
I think there's three main takeaways in terms of the approach that could, happen in the next several months for Canada One of those, of course, is something that all of us don't really want, which is the whole 51st state thing. Another one would be confrontation with the United States, which is dangerous for a lot of reasons. And the pathway that's being charted is somewhere in the middle of those two. Generously, you could call it cooperation, collaboration. Less generously, you could call it something like vassaldom, where the Canadian government has decided that they have to play a kind of junior partnership role with the United States and its overall global agenda with regard to the Golden Dome, with regard to global economic competition with China, and with regard to other issues of security cooperation, possibly also, of course, what has been transpiring in Gaza the last several days and the last week, roughly, with the announcement of this agreement to end hostilities and end fighting, supposedly, in Gaza, and the creation of a kind of authority, I suppose, a so-called peace authority that Donald Trump would be the chair of, with possibly the participation of the former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, Mark Carney expressing some support for that as well.
So given a broad slate of issues there, did you get the sense that Mark Carney, his goal today is trade? And if so, what is he hoping to come out with?
Well, he's hoping to come out with some kind of an agreement that gives him a chance to save face with Canadian workers. He obviously campaigned on, elbows up and fighting to defend Canadian sovereignty. It looks like for the time being, he's going to be able to come back and say that the 51st state threat is abated for the time being. Trump is given to, of course, as we all know, bombastically making this threat every so often. And then also with the idea that Trump and Carney are, as they said, working on the numbers with regard to autos being made in America and autos being made in Canada, that there might be some kind of an agreement that saves not all, but some Canadian jobs with respect to the auto industry. So those are two big ones. And of course, more broadly, we have the question of creating a kind of investment environment in Canada, in the U.S., and in North America more generally that favors economic growth, advanced technology investment, AI investment, and creating a business climate where there's more certainty, not just for Canada in terms of Carney's interests, right, but in terms of a broader North American climate that allows for investment. There's a lot of concern, as both leaders suggested in the meeting, about competing with China in the coming years, especially in areas of high-tech development. And that's something that a united front of Canada and the United States working together can create a bit more economic certainty for different global companies that are involved in that.
And I'm wondering if you sensed if there's more pressure on Mark Carney this time around from May. At the time it was shortly after the meeting with the Ukrainian president Volodymyr Zelensky and the kind of scene that took place in the Oval Office, during that time, and where Trump berated the Ukrainian president. I just have a TikTok comment here from Sarah who writes, "I'm tired of laughing off Trump's comments. This isn't a laughing matter anymore." So I wonder if over time there's been that increasing frustration, as you see from Sarah's comment, but also more pressure on Mark Carney, that the clock is ticking and you have promised a trade deal. And so is he facing, is he going to have to come back with something concrete?
He'd certainly like to come back with something concrete, especially relief in the sectors like auto and steel and aluminum. Mm-hmm. We know that there's lumber tariffs that are coming in the next several, I think 1 week from now, there's going to be an additional lumber tariff as well. So he's under a lot of pressure, obviously, and that might also explain a bit of his diplomatic demeanor in the White House just earlier this morning, right? Striking a very, very diplomatic tone, even describing Trump as a transformative president, comments which, maybe are a little bit over the top, frankly, in terms of being diplomatic, let's say. But indeed, Canadians are frustrated. The Conservatives have been outflanking Carney on this issue in the last few days, with Poilievre talking about no more losing, I believe, is a rough paraphrase of what Polyev said maybe just yesterday.
That's it. No
And of
more
course,
losing. It is time for you to deliver the promised wins. That's the exact quote from the letter he wrote to Mark Carney. Yeah.
Indeed, and of course, Polyev is smart enough to understand the position that Carney and indeed all of Canada is in with respect to the United States, and that's why my earlier comment about vassaldom, it's not a nice pill to swallow, but it's the pill that we're being asked to swallow, essentially, that the U.S. has the leverage in this relationship because of the size of the U.S. economy, not for any other reason. That's the main reason. And of course, we, depend on them for our trade, for our well-being. We see layoffs throughout the Canadian economy at this point, the auto sector, the film and TV sector. This is a major, major economic issue in Canada. And in the last several years, we've seen a shift of lots of working class Canadians voting for the Conservatives, not for the Liberals. They used to maybe vote more for the NDP, but we've seen a bit, as we know, of a wipeout of the NDP. So the Liberals have to kind of deliver for this particular group of Canadians, which makes up, of course, the bulk of Canadian voters, right? Working class and middle class people make up the majority of Canadian society. So that's a serious issue for Carney. And that anger, that frustration that the commenter was sharing, I think is something that many Canadians feel.
Jovian, always great to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Jovian Radheshwar is a political science instructor at Douglas College. Taking your calls on this, asking you, what are you hoping Mark Carney comes out of this meeting with Donald Trump? And what does BC need out of these negotiations? Jovian mentioned the upcoming new tariffs on the forestry sector, on lumber. What are the implications of that? And what are you hoping BC gets? How does BC figure into these talks for you? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email again is bctoday@cbc.ca, or you can leave a comment, like you heard earlier, on our TikTok Live. Well, as much as there has been an impact on the forestry sector, there was no mention of the forestry sector this morning. Canadian softwood lumber currently faces a 35% duty and another 10% tariff being added on October 14th. Donald Trump announced those new tariffs on imported timber and lumber last week, as well as 25% duties on kitchen cabinets and upholstered furniture. So for more on the impact on the forestry sector, I'm joined now by John Brink. He's the president and CEO of Brink Forest Products in Prince George. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, nice to be here.
What were you hoping to hear today?
What I was hoping to hear is that, the Prime Minister Carney and President Trump had a very, very good meeting, and that it included a number of things, including tariffs, and in particular for British Columbia and Western Canada, is duties on lumber products for both the primary sector, not only in BC, but across Canada, and secondary manufacturers that have been hit with first 14.5%, then 35% duty, and effective on the 14th of October, up to 45% duty on exported products in a duty. Add to that another 25% duty to companies that are manufacturing furniture and other fiber-related products that go into the United States. It is bizarre. But I had hoped that would become a major issue of discussion. And I'm afraid so far that it isn't, that the focus likely was on auto, steel, and aluminum, and not about lumber. That really, really bothers me immensely, and should for forest manufacturing companies throughout Canada, but in particular Alberta and British Columbia. And I believe the time has come for us in British Columbia and manufacturers of lumber manufacture that affects all the regions throughout the province of British Columbia. There used to be 120 sawmills in British Columbia. 60 of them have been closed down. More to follow. Value-added manufacturers There used to be 800 value-added manufacturing companies in British Columbia. Now there is less than 100, which are all, as we speak, in danger, including our own. And we are in northern British Columbia, we used to have 40 secondary manufacturing companies. Now there are in northern British Columbia maybe 4 or 5, and all of them feel that they will be out of business or going out of business, and the ones that don't wish they were, including us.
You wish
So
you
I'm
were.
really disappointed with the federal government, and equally disappointed with the Premier of the province of British Columbia.
Okay. Let me get to calls in a moment here, but I really want to follow up with you. You know, you sound very frustrated. How much
Yes.
of that decline is due to, you know, we've seen a decline in the forest industry even prior to these tariffs, but what is the impact of these tariffs specifically on the industry?
Well, you know, that you can well imagine if you have to pay 45% duties into the market of the United States, no one can afford to do that. Already the forest industry was in trouble even before the duties were
Right.
put in at 14.5%, then 35, now 45%. If the objective of the Trump government is to and the U.S. softwood lumber alliance, if it is their objective to destroy the forest industry in Canada, they are well in the way to doing that. And the frustrating part about it is that Trump, regardless of all of this, once the lumber or the housing industry is back to normal in the United States, 1.5 million starts is usually the indicator. It's about half of that now. They will always be short at least 25 to 35% of the lumber required to build those houses. They simply don't have it. They cannot knock down all their parks. And regardless of Trump is saying they have enough, no, they don't. And that is the reality.
John Brink is with me, President and CEO of Brink Forest Products in Prince George. As you heard, very disappointed in what he did not hear out of the meeting this morning between the Prime Minister and the U.S. President. Let's take a couple of calls here on what you have been hoping or are hoping Mark Carney comes back with from this meeting and what you think BC needs in these negotiations. Chris is joining us from Victoria. Hi, Chris.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me all right?
Sure can. Go ahead.
I guess I just want to say, like, I can't imagine how difficult it must be to go in and deal with this Trump administration. Like, they are an absolute nightmare. Anyone who thinks that you're going to go in and have a meeting with him and then Trump's just automatically going to reduce tariffs or take away tariffs or trade agreement without any massive concessions to go their way, I think is crazy. And so I think, having an amicable meeting with, no negative results, no worse results, and hopefully a pathway towards, some cooperation and improved relations with the U.S. is about as much as you could ever expect, a government to get out of this kind of meeting. And so to hear, the conservative government, Pierre Poilievre, say, no more losses, that's a really easy thing to say from his position. But man, am I ever glad that he's not the one that's in there making these negotiations. I don't think he'd do half as good of a job as Carney's doing.
Chris, thank you very much for the call. Wendy in Powell River, what are you hoping from the Prime Minister at these meetings?
I just want to applaud the last caller. I agree with him completely. I think that Trump's modus operandi is to divide and conquer, and he's not looking for a solution. I have never seen him do anything that's looking for an us situation out of a divided perspective. Going in and coming out and Canada maintaining its sovereignty is the most valuable thing that we can ask for. And I think that with Trump's desire to divide and conquer, it behooves us not to fall into the trap of devouring ourselves in wishing our own industry, whether it's lumber or autos or whatever, is going to be an argument amongst ourselves about who deserves more what. We need to retain our sovereignty. And I think Carney's doing a good job.
Good point. Since you make the point about forestry, Wendy, let me go back to my guest and John Brink, President and CEO of Brink Forest Products in Prince George. You mentioned earlier you were also disappointed in the Premier of BC, Premier David Eby. He did issue a statement when these new tariffs coming October 14th were announced, saying this is an economic assault on BC families. BC will stand with our forestry workers as we diversify our economy. What are you hoping then from the province on this?
Well, I think we have to be much more proactive, and with all due respect, I'm not trying to be political. I'm not left, right, center. I just want to have the right thing for all the people in British Columbia and in Canada. That being said, having lived here in the province of British Columbia for 60 years, having a company for 50 years, that I must honestly say the NDP government has not been very proactive in raising the issues already a long time before. But there are further other problems. I think it's just about time, after 10 years and $11 billion in deficits and on and on and on, it's time to give somebody else a chance. So let John Blestad go into it and show us what he can do. The other part is that I believe that Alberta and British Columbia have to work close together. I'm proposing that they form. I don't like to see Alberta leave. I don't want to see we are all part of Canada. I would call it the Alberta British Columbia ABC Strategic Alliance, where we work together on oil, gas, transportation infrastructure, and timber and lumber together, the two provinces as a strategic alliance to find new markets with new products and become very, very proactive together. But I think the NDP had enough of a chance here for 10 years. They haven't done it. Let's make a change.
It's an interesting idea, and we'll follow to see if there's a response to that. John Brink, very good to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice to be here.
John Brink, President and CEO of Brink Forest Products in Prince George. We are watching a podium where we expect the minister responsible for U.S. and Canada trade, Dominic LeBlanc, to be speaking. This is right outside the White House, and we are watching that. We'll bring it to you live as soon as that begins. And I think we have a call. We have lost our call with Philip at Quadra Island. Let me play a clip for you now, or let me see if we have any emails here, because I think we are in our TV break. So I just want to make sure that we have enough time to play you a clip. I'm going to read some emails here. Joanne writes, we can only hope that the multiple problems Donald Trump has, including the outcry from many American cities who are feeling the impact of Canadian not stocking American products or not traveling to the USA. Off the political platform, when you talk to Canadians, most Canadians don't feel the relationship will ever return. When trust is broken, it is one of the hardest to repair. Of course, Canada needs to repair trade, but we also need to keep looking to other markets, removing barriers for interprovincial, but not being pushed by the Conservatives like Alberta calling British Columbians un-Canadian, or Pierre Poilievre ignoring that trade has shifted within the USA, using Trump's untruths to make arguments at home. What the majority of Canadians don't want is the political rhetoric by Trump. All we can do is remain hopeful but realistic at the same time. Thank you very much for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca. Elizabeth writes, I think for most people who express their disappointment with the negotiations, please don't forget who you are negotiating with. If you watch what they're doing to their own people and the effects they're having on their own society, you may appreciate the approach the Canadian delegation is taking. Elizabeth, thank you as well. bctoday@cbc.ca. It's 12:30 now. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thank you for joining us. As I mentioned, we are watching to see if the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc will start his address or his speaking to reporters. There is a podium ready for him. So as soon as he comes up, We will bring that to you live. We'll also talk about healthcare in our province and asking if municipalities stepping in to fill the healthcare gaps, is that a solution? We're going to hear from the mayor of Delta on that, as well as the mayor of Sicamous, where they have actually taken over their local healthcare clinic. So we're asking you what it's like to try and access a clinic right now, and what do you think of this idea that's being floated by some municipalities? Take your calls on that too. Right now, it is time for a CBC News update.
Good afternoon. The BCGEU says about 25,000 of its 34,000 members are now taking part in job action. The union says workers have again escalated action by expanding pickets to another 18 liquor and cannabis stores, as well as 30 offices for natural resources and land use permits. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says BC's opposition to a proposed bitumen pipeline to the North Coast is un-Canadian and unconstitutional. Smith posted on social media platform X that Premier David Eby's vocal opposition to the Alberta-backed pipeline is akin to demonizing an industry that has generated wealth in both provinces. And charges have been laid against a 36-year-old man in Nanaimo who was seen allegedly kicking and punching his dog. Images of the incident in late July were widely circulated on social media. Nanaimo RCMP say the accused was observed beating a German Shepherd while walking it on a public street. And now the forecast on the North Coast, mainly cloudy this afternoon with a high of 11. Highs around 14 with a chance of showers and strong winds in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, showers with a high of 11 degrees. Highs up to 19 and mainly sunny this afternoon in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, increasing cloudiness with a high of 18. And a bit of sunshine this afternoon in Greater Victoria. Increasing cloudiness in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, with highs around 16. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Rob. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. This is BC Today. Let's turn to provincial politics now. As we told you about yesterday, the fall sitting of the BC legislature has kicked off with each of the parties facing their own unique challenges. For the BC Conservatives, the leadership of John Rustad continues to face questions. He recently survived the leadership review. Yesterday, though, returned to the legislature with 4 fewer MLAs. Now, CBC host of the early edition, Stephen Quinn, asked him this morning what he makes of the unity or lack thereof among the BC Conservatives.
I mean, how successful do you think you have been in keeping a cohesive party together, one that can, in a united way, oppose the NDP?
When you go back and look, for example, last spring at the media comments about our performance, we did more and were more effective as an opposition than any opposition in BC's history. We moved forward private member bills that got passed. The first time in BC's history that private member bills independently have gone through and gotten passed. We shamed the government into getting rid of the carbon tax. We shamed the government into backing down on safe supply. Although
the government got rid of the carbon tax because the federal government was killing the tax, and David Eby said they would do so if the federal government did it.
That's very true, but we had been pushing for 2 years to get rid of the carbon tax, and David Eby refused, said he would never get rid of it, even if he was the last province in the country.
Sure.
Because of how important it is, and yet he got rid of it.
Yes, he got rid of it after the federal government killed the tax.
You're right. But
Yeah.
why did the federal government kill the tax? Because we as Conservatives put enough pressure on them
Because
that
the
he
BC
felt he had to
Conservative
back
Party,
down on it.
because the BC Conservative Party killed the federal.
No, because we were part of a conservative movement across this country.
It's 12:34 now. This is BC Today. Again, we have our eye on Washington, where meetings have just wrapped up between the Prime Minister and the President, and we are expecting the Trade Minister, Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, to speak to reporters and take questions. We'll bring that to you live when it begins. Right now, though, we're talking healthcare, and Delta Hospital's ER was forced to close again this weekend because of staffing shortages. It is the 4th closure this year. Mayor George Harvie has been calling on Fraser Health and the province for immediate intervention. Meanwhile, though, he's pursuing another step, the possibility of Delta opening its own urgent and primary care centers. He's going to join us in a moment, and we're asking you as well. You can call in and let us know, how hard is it to find a clinic or a doctor when you need it? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca, or let us know what your experience is on TikTok. Mayor George Harvie joins me now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us, first of all, what happened on the weekend at Delta Hospital?
Well, in the afternoon, or I should say in the early morning, we were notified by the admin staff at the Delta Hospital through Fraser Health that there was going to be a closure on Saturday, starting at 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And, quite surprised. But again, it goes back to the fact that they could not provide proper physician staffing. And I find that very frustrating. I do appreciate that the Minister Osborne did give me a call on Saturday, and during our discussions, I asked her to commit to having a meeting as soon as possible with Delta Council and others, including our members of our Delta Hospital Foundation and our emergency doctors at the hospital. And I'm pleased to say that on Monday morning, she committed and did that. And we have a meeting coming up towards the end of the week to discuss the issues. That's fine, but I feel now that we need to be in a position to see what are the options. Just stating that it's unacceptable and political rhetoric, that doesn't work. We need to work together with our Delta Hospital Foundation and our Delta Hospital emergency physicians to see if we can do something different. They are getting swarmed with people like myself that don't have a doctor, but they need to go to somewhere. They can't get into a clinic. They're going into the Delta emergency department. And that's overloading our system. So council last night unanimously supported a motion that I made with regards to hiring a consultant to look at the feasibility and the possibility of Delta doing an urgent and primary care center on its own. I'm looking forward to working on the procurement, and also looking forward to seeing the results of what we're looking forward to a very in-depth, fiscal analysis insofar as can we make it work. There are examples in Colwood and also up in other areas, Sycamoose, for example. But right now, we need to do something to ensure that our residents have access to medical care when they need it.
There are other examples. As you mentioned, Sycamoose will speak with the mayor of Sycamoose in a few minutes from now. I'm wondering, it's a really interesting idea. I wonder about any concern around downloading. We know municipalities have always been concerned about downloading of responsibilities, whether it's mental health care, for example, because of municipalities de facto having to provide that. So do you worry about Delta taking on what is a provincial responsibility?
Yes, I do, and that's why we have a consultant. That's the process for having the consultant look at those situations. I would hope that the province would partner with us on this. That's my hope. But if it's significant downloading, then yes, then we can't do it. But we just can't sit still. I'm convinced the province is not in a fiscal position to provide urgent care centers for Delta, and we actually need two. One in South Delta for the South Delta population, plus the Tsawwassen First Nations growing population, and one in North Delta, which is very densely populated. So it's going to be very interesting, but I just, as mayor, I've got to look also after our community's health. And right now, people are not being able to go to a medical, when they have problems, attend our hospital or even clinics. We have run out of clinics here too.
What does that mean for your residents?
I think they're scared. And, we have the right to have proper health care throughout BC. We're a province that once was very fiscally prudent and really providing good wealth to people. We didn't have this problems many years ago. And slowly, as the data has shown that we have more people that need help through emergency departments or through urgent and primary care centers, it's just something that we need to get going on. But I'm quite very pleased with the support I have from my council, and I'm looking forward to that direct meeting with Minister Osborne in a few days.
Okay, let me just put out our numbers here. And Mayor Harvie, you mentioned you don't have a family doctor and that it is hard to get to see one. Asking our audience as well, how hard is it for you to get into a clinic or see a doctor when you need it? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690. And what do you make of this idea of municipal government stepping in to open, in this case, urgent and primary care clinics? And Mayor Harvie says they need 2 to fill that gap in healthcare. He gave a couple of other examples as well, Colwood and Sicamous. So what do you make of that idea? Municipalities filling the healthcare gap too. 604-669-3733, or you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email, bctoday@cbc.ca, and you can leave a comment on our TikTok Live. Mayor Harvie, why do you think this is so recurring? Why is it such an intractable issue? Is it the recruitment?
It's definitely recruitment. I've talked this morning to some emerged doctors in neighboring cities, and they just feel totally burnt out. And right now, I can give you an example. When we have our fire department courses, it responds 24/7. And when there's a firefighter that can't attend work for sickness or any other reasons, we have a robust system of ensuring there's replacement for that firefighter. We do not shut the fire halls down. And in our case, they have trouble over weekends, it seems, attracting somebody to fill in for spots where a doctor, in this case was due to illness, isn't available. And the end result is that emergency department, for those very life-threatening events, they have to be redirected to another hospital. And we already have the highest response time for ambulances to attend urgent situations for people, medical calls. So, we feel very frustrated here in the city of Delta. Again, but as mayor, I just can't sit still. We need to think outside the box, and that's what we're going to do with the consultant.
What's been the response? And you said you had unanimous support for this motion yesterday, is that right?
I said, yes, it was unanimous support, but every member of council stated that they're very concerned about utilizing our tax dollars and accepting downloading. So I just want to make that plain, that we are all together and that we should not be accepting downloading. But is there another model that'll work? And I'm looking towards the success at Colwood and the success that Sicamous has had.
Okay, we'll hear from the mayor of Sicamous in a moment. I want to ask you, though, I think one of your councillors, Dylan Kruger, also had a motion about these closures to declare them a public health emergency. I understand that was defeated. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, it was defeated, and as mayor and chair, I declared that the notice of motion was out of order. The only person in BC that can actually declare a public health emergency is the Provincial Medical Health Office. And so the idea of just declaring an emergency but not doing anything about it, I found it was unacceptable. And there was also parts of the motion as far as asking for meetings with the minister as soon as possible. Council was advised yesterday afternoon that that meeting was going to be held, so that was redundant. So council did support my ruling that it was out of order. And again, we're looking forward to starting to work with the minister and trying to find a resolution to the problem that we have.
Okay, we'll follow up with you following your meeting later this week with Health Minister Josie Osborne. Mayor Harvie, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for your interest.
That's George Harvie, Mayor of Delta. And we have been asking you, what do you think of this idea? Delta is looking now at that option, possibly, of opening up and running its own urgent care centers, urgent and primary care centers. They do not have one right now. Do you worry about downloading of those responsibilities from the provincial government? Let us know, too, how hard is it for you to get into a clinic right now? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Paul Adams is joining us, who's actually executive director of the BC Rural Health Network, and he's called in from Princeton. Paul, you've been on the show before. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you, and good afternoon. I just wanted to make listeners aware that at the same time Delta did close overnight, that the 100 Mile House Hospital emergency room was closed, that the Oliver South Okanagan emergency room was closed, that the emergency room in Tumbler Ridge has an overnight closure, that the emergency room in Port Hardy has an overnight closure, and that these events happen way more often in rural BC. And obviously, we don't have the same population density, but at the same time, when we arrive at a closed emergency room, there's a closed sign on the door, and at least with the case of Delta this weekend, the doors were open and that you could get access to people who have medical training to assist you in the time of emergency. And we are literally hours away from the next available emergency room. So again, my call here is just to make the urban population aware that the inequities that happen within rural and remote communities really are extreme, and that we need to take some serious measures to make sure that hospital emergency room doors stay open even if full service is not available.
You make a good point there in that it's going to be a longer trip, and that's a concern, right, to get to the nearest hospital. What do you think then of this idea of municipalities opening some kind of healthcare center?
And again, we're very supportive of initiatives. Colwood is an example. There's, on the looking at on Vancouver Island, there is various models of care which are being run by community. There is the Whistler 360 model that's happening in Whistler, BC, and these are municipally led. And the shoe swap example that you're about to have on is another great example. Sycamoose, another great example of community getting involved in their healthcare planning and systems. The challenge that we face, though, is many communities are not equitably, situated in regards to their wealth, and not equitably able to have the social resources to do the planning involved. So I think that we need to make sure that we're having, changes to systems that provide more opportunities for access to primary care. And in rural BC, again, we have the same physicians working in the clinic that are working in the emergency room.
Right.
So often there isn't a big advantage to having, an additional clinic if it's the same person who's responsible for the emergency department.
And again, we're back to that recruitment question. Paul, really good to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Paul Adams calling in from Princeton. He's executive director of the BC Rural Health Network. You heard him mention Sycamoose there. In 2021, the district took over the operation of that community's medical clinic. And Colleen Anderson is the mayor of Sycamoose and joins me now by phone. Good afternoon, Mayor Anderson.
Good afternoon, Michelle. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for taking our call. And your district has been brought up as an example. Now tell us about what happened in 2021 and how you came to take over this clinic.
Well, actually, the journey started a little bit before 2021. It started in 2014 with a newly elected group of folks that were very like-minded. And one of our first initiatives was to just purchase some property, and we did have some property on Main Street. So in 2015, we purchased that property. Then, because we had a private practice, medical private practice, docs in Sycamoose, who is ready to retire, we went, okay, so now we have a need to look after this facility. So we bought that facility as it was almost impossible for us to recruit a doc to, purchase to do the admin work, to purchase the toilet paper. So what we had to do was create a model that we could manage, and that's how the plan started rolling out. We purchased the medical building that the doc was in, and then we purchased his practice, and we got into the business of recruiting doctors, and we recruited a couple. And then we decided to take the property that we had, and with the partnership with Splatsine, we got some grant funding for the first input. And here we are, 2025, and just a grand opening. The District of Sycamoose does own the medical center here, and we employ the medical office assistants, and the doctors are charge their MSP. So it is a district-run facility and owned by the district.
And let me get to that question that Paul brought up as well in terms of who's going to staff it. I have an email here from Roman who writes, the issue here is a global healthcare shortage. So what has recruiting been like since you had that doctor retire? What's it been like trying to find doctors to work there?
Well, we've got 2 docs, and they are quite happy with a life balance, a work-life balance. So our recruitment hasn't been hard. We had 2.5 for a while, and with one retiring and continuing her role in Edmonton, she was moving back and forth, but may, eventually come back to the health center here. So recruitment hasn't been a problem with the new facility.
Why do you think that is?
And Sigmus is a beautiful community to live in. It's right on the Shuswap Lake. So lifestyle is part of it. A new facility is part of it. Like I said, work-life balance is important to doctors now.
Okay.
So it just seems to fit for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder though, with family doctors running their own clinics, if what you have there is a situation that is slightly different and that the administration seems to fall to the district, and does that ease the load for these doctors?
Absolutely, it does. And like I said, yes, the medical office assistants work for the DOS, so it definitely eases the load. We have a manager over at the clinic who manages the clinic. Our clinic's 15,000 square feet, so it houses our primary care now. It's our docs. It's our massage therapist. It has a traditional healing space. So there are other things that there's an eye doctor in there that flow under this primary care building. So there's also, 2,500 square feet of community space, which is rented out for weddings or functions or training.
Yeah.
So ways to recoup the cost to keep the facility running, which is what we're doing. We're renting the space out.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, was the cost of it. It sounds like you're recouping it through the other parts of this operation. How scalable do you think this is? Skimus is a very small community, but how much of a model could this be for other municipalities?
It's a leap of faith for sure. And you do need a group of like-minded people that have the vision. And when we are elected to council, as our council today, one of our main goals is to keep healthcare in our community. We are just 2,800 people. We go to 15,000 in the summer, and we've got a base around us of about 6,000. So we've also got the Bruin Bridge construction, Highway 1 construction here. So, and we're a community that has a lot of seniors. So it was really important, really key for us to have a vision and make sure that we kept healthcare here. Is it scalable? We run about an $80,000 deficit to the taxpayers, but that's going to go down as our tenants increase. So the model is working for us. I think it is scalable, but it's a process, right? You need to have that piece of land.
And the taxpayer, given that deficit right now, what response have you heard, or what kind of feedback have you heard on that?
As far as our community and taxpayers?
Yes, and
I think they're very happy. They're very happy to have health care in our community, and that's just going to go down. As I said, as we add tenants, the deficit will go down. So it's an interesting model, and we're happy, that we did take that leap of faith. But like I said, it's like-minded people working together with that need to solve a problem. And there's other communities that have this problem, and we all can't be asking for the same thing because there's just not enough money to go around. So we had to take the initiative and make this happen for our community.
It is certainly,
and like I said, sorry?
Go ahead.
And with partnership with Splatseen, we got our first draw of grant funding. So that was key as well.
It is certainly an interesting model, as you mentioned. Thank you so much for describing to us how it came to be, Mayor Anderson. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Colleen Anderson is You too. Thank you very much. Colleen Anderson, Mayor of Sicamous. Maria has been waiting on the line. Hi, Maria in Valemount. Thanks for calling in.
Hello. Thanks for having me there. I just wanted to say Valemount is even smaller than Sicamous. We have probably about 1,000 people, if that much, in the town, and with the surrounding areas, we maybe have 1,500 people living here. The next town is McBride, 90 kilometers away, with a hospital, and to the South Blue River, no health care there. To the east, it's just 120 kilometers. But Valemount is doing really well when it comes to a health clinic, and we have about, I think, 4 permanent doctors here. So we are very fortunate that way. And the clinic, as far as I know, is fairly well equipped. It's not new, but it's doing okay. But where we are not doing well is when we get older. And I know of so many seniors that were forced to move, let's say, to Kamloops or Prince George or even further away once they needed permanent medical care. And there were quite a few, there was at least 2 initiatives by a local group of advocates who really worked so hard to make it happen that seniors can stay in town. And there were facilities built, and one is built right now, maybe it's almost done. But and we were also happy to hear that now, once we get older, we can stay in town. And but things changed, and I wonder what happened there, why it is just a senior housing and not includes medical care with a couple nurses. And yeah.
Maria, thank you very much. I'm going to squeeze in here. I just have 30 seconds, but Rhonda in Parksville, you don't have a doctor right now, right?
I don't have a doctor. I was 74 when the doctor retired. Now I'm 76. And now I need a doctor more than I ever have before. We have no clinics who will accept anybody. I've lived here in Parksville for over just about 45 years, and we have an urgent care that doesn't work very well. I myself had a terrible experience there, and we have on Facebook a group of people, and it seems like if you're a woman and if you're a senior, you can be embarrassed to death just depending on what doctor you get. And
So you haven't had a good experience at your UCC Urgent Care Center. Rhonda, thank you very much. My apologies for jumping in. We are just running out of time, but there's an example of someone who does not have a doctor at 76 years old. Thank you for the call, Rhonda in Parksville.